Welcome to the Astroimaging Journey channel. Please enjoy the episode.
Alright, welcome back to the Astroimaging Journey channel. And in this episode, we're going to do, like we did in the previous one, just go through a couple pieces and parts of the rig and do a little mini review / my impressions. So, what am I going to discuss this episode? This episode, I'm going to discuss two things, and only two things, because they kind of go hand in hand. The Celestron CGX Mount and the StarSense AutoAlign camera and hand controller. So far, CGX, rock solid. I've been able to use it about 14, 15 nights now, and rock solid, works beautifully once it's aligned and everything's going good. I have had no issues outside of my initial hang-ups with the configuration and what I should have done in the beginning of just considering everything default and started from scratch. Other than that, the mount itself been rock solid. Haven't had any issues with it. But again, it's only been about 15 nights worth of testing. So to that end, what is the one issue I have with it, and that is when it's slewing during the auto align, but I think that's more a problem with the StarSense. Now, the Celestron StarSense auto align camera and hand controller have been nearly invaluable. I can hit align, let it do its thing. There's a couple more buttons in there, but hit align, make sure it's in the home. Actually, with the CGXL, with the CGEMII, let me back up for a second. With the CGEMII, I had to set it into its home position, hit align, hit OK, and it would slew, point to two easterly targets, take a image of one, plate solve it, slew to the next one, plate solve that one, or image it, plate solve it, point to a target on the west, again, image, plate solve, point to a fourth target, second on the west, image, plate solve, based on those, figure out what its alignment calculations are, and it was fine. Never really had any problems with it slewing around or having issues getting the targets. The only issue was that with the CGEMII, I had to manually put it in that home position. Undo the clutch, get it turned in there, get the marks aligned, and minor issue. Obviously, I used the CGEMII for a couple of years, 3 years, and it was not a problem. CGEMII 2, that is. And it wasn't that big of a problem. I just got used to it. It was worked into my routine. The CGX, on the other hand, has sensors in there. So it will automatically go into that home position or switch position, and then it knows this is my baseline. Now I can go. So when you hit that align, it asks you if you want to go to the switch position. You say yes. It goes there and starts doing the alignment. Problem I'm having, and it did not happen with the CGEMII 2, is that it would point to the first target to the east, take its image, start slewing to the second target to the east, and while it's trying to solve the first image, if it got to the second target before it finished solving the first target, it would not actually image the second target or second alignment point. It would immediately move to the third, image that, while it's solving, it would go back to the second target, and usually it's still slewing, crossing the meridian. When it solves the third, images the second, while it's solving, goes to the fourth, images, solves, and it's good. As far as that's concerned, as far as the imaging and plate solving and figuring out the offsets and all that, not a problem. Worked great. The problem is, for me, is the extra wear and tear of having to move from 2 to 3 back to 2 to 4. That's extra wear and tear. What I did find was if I waited that extra 15 minutes, it wouldn't have that problem. Let me try to explain what I mean. When I go out there, I look at what time is astronomical twilight start. I would always try to go out there about 15 minutes earlier than that, power up everything, make sure everything's ready, so that at astronomical twilight, I could do my alignment. That's about midway in those twilight hours between sunset and complete darkness, or astronomical twilight ends, and you're in the darkest parts of the night. If I start at the astronomical twilight begin time, with the CGEMII, I never had a problem. So I figured the same was with the CGX. Maybe because the CGX is getting on the second target faster than the CGEMII did. Maybe that was an issue I just never had with the CGEMII. I don't know. However, if it is close to that astronomical twilight begin time frame, the sky is just bright enough that some of the more faint stars are not present enough, and it's taking longer for the StarSense to plate solve that first image. And if I delay to a midpoint about 15 minutes beyond that astronomical twilight time, begin time. So if it says astronomical twilight begins at 9 o'clock, if I wait till 9:15, it is just that little bit more of a dark sky, and it solves much quicker, which makes sense, right? If you have more stars, you have more data points, more positions that it can use to plate solve. Once I did that, and I did that delay of 15 minutes, it would go to point 1, image, start slowing to point 2. By the time it got to point 2, it had finished solving point 1. It would finish the slew to point 2, actually take an image, start solving it, move it to 3, and I never had any problems beyond that. So would I recommend the StarSense AutoAlign camera and hand controller? Most definitely. Makes alignment so much easier, not having to connect to your camera, make sure it's in the middle, using a reticle or anything of that nature. Just a couple button presses on the hand controller, it does the rest. 99% of the time. There's been a few times where full moon out and it just couldn't find, it just could not plate solve for some reason, and would start hunting around, and it became a mess. But that only happened on a couple full moons, not every full moon. So that's that. I consider those one-offs, and we image during the full moon, yes. Do I image during the full moon? Generally, no. That 4-day window, 4 or 5 day window, I usually use that time as a decompressed time. Don't run the telescope, just watch some Netflix or something, who knows. But other than just that one little thing about slewing from 2 to 3 and back, once I figured out that little caveat, much like with the CGEMII about working the home position into my workflow, or my initial setup workflow, it hasn't been an issue. So yes, I would fully recommend the StarSense AutoAlign, because there's one other benefit that I've found to be critical, at least for me. While it is sitting there doing its slewing back and forth and moving around, I can sit there and watch my cables. I can make sure nothing's going to bind, nothing's going to catch, nothing's going to get snagged and potentially damage equipment, damage cables, and ultimately ruin a night of imaging. So I think I'm going to end this video here. Actually, no, let me throw in the focal reducer, the Celestron 0.7x focal reducer. Just a little set of mirrors on the back, not mirrors, optics on the back that take the 2600mm native focal length, reduces that down to a 1960mm focal length. It also reduces the f-stop from f10 to f7, basically getting twice as much light in the same amount of time. We'll go into that here in a second. What does that mean? Essentially, that means that at 2600mm, my field of view is that big. When I step into 1960, it now becomes that big. So I can get a bigger section of the sky. I found early on that with the 2600mm, it was just a little too tight, a little too much reach for things like the Bode's galaxies or Bode's galaxy and some of the other galaxies, because they would fill the frame so much that it would even go off the sensor a little bit. With that focal reducer, I'm now able to fill that frame, get the entirety of Bode's galaxy and other targets in that frame without a problem. Crescent Nebula is another one. We just did that one not too long ago. And so that made it a little bit easier. And going from f10 to f7, we're letting in twice as much light, which means now I can do the same amount of photon captures in 5 minutes at f7 than it would have taken me to get the same amount in 10 minutes at f10. So it reduces either A, cuts the amount of time to get the same results in half, or I can keep the same amount of time and hopefully generate double the signal to noise. Not exactly, but close. And potentially, therefore, also better resolution if I'm getting a better dynamic range, better signal to noise. So that's a balancing act that you got to figure out what your exposure lengths are going to be. So it's been actually quite nice having that. And I really haven't done much imaging without it on. I did some in the very beginning just to see, but like I said, Bode's galaxy went off the edge of the sensor. Really didn't want to do mosaics and all that. So I was like, yeah, I don't think so. Let me go with the focal reducer. I bought it when I bought the telescope. I put it on there. Things worked a lot better. Haven't gone back. So would I recommend it? Yes, it all depends on what you want. If you're looking for that extra reach to do some planetary, then it's going to be great. You know, the focal reducer is not going to be great because you're going to want that extra reach to reach out and touch Jupiter and Saturn and all those. However, if you're looking for just a little bit wider field to fill your frame, or you know, depending on your sensor size and all that, you know, there's other things involved, and yeah, it might be worth it. Cutting the amount of, you know, if your mount only tracks for 5 minutes reliably, beyond that, your stars start tailing or whatever, then maybe the focal reducer will allow you to still do that 5-minute exposure, but now you're getting double the signal. You know, you're getting more light in, so maybe you'll get better exposures like you would have if you had gone 10-minute exposures. So yeah, I would definitely recommend having it in your toolbox. Doesn't mean you always should use it, but it should be in your toolbox. For example, it would be like me having on this camera a 2x teleconverter. Do I have it? Yes. Do I always use it? No. But I have it just in case I just need that little bit of extra reach, and I don't want to go and buy another lens just for this little bit of extra reach, when this will work good enough for this situation. And the only time I would need that lens is this one time and probably never again. Then I have it. So it's kind of the same thing. It's one of those tools in the toolbox. I personally am using the focal reducer and all my imaging, but I would still recommend having it on hand. Even if you're not using it now, you might in the future. So with that, I think I'm going to end the video here. And yeah, so that I'm going to say thanks everybody for watching. Hope you're staying safe and healthy out there. As always, clear skies, and have a good one.
Thank you for watching yet another video from the Astrometry Junior channel. Really appreciate your viewership. In our upper right, we have the latest video we've uploaded. In our lower right, we have what YouTube might think you would enjoy. And in the lower left is our subscription button. Please like this video, subscribe if you so choose. As always, clear skies, have a good one.